Welcome back to the deep dive. Today's going to be a little different. Usually we're dissecting tech trends or, economic forecasts, looking at the external world to figure out where things are going.
Right, the macro view.
Exactly. But today we are turning the lens entirely inward. We're tackling a stack of research that feels, honestly, a little urgent. Not breaking news urgent, but soul deep urgent.
It is a topic that touches pretty much everyone, even if they don't talk about it. In fact, usually the more someone needs this, the less they talk about it.
That's it. We're looking at this comprehensive, multidisciplinary framework for healing. And I want to be clear right off the bat, we aren't just talking about, getting over a cold.
No, this is deeper.
This is about that deep chronic exhaustion that comes from stress, from trauma, from burnout, and from physical pain that just won't quit. The sources today pose a really provocative question, and it really stopped me in my tracks.
That's the question.
What if healing isn't something you chase, but something you allow?
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds so simple, almost too simple, but it represents such a profound shift in perspective.
It does.
I mean, the dominant model, the one we all grew up with, the one embedded in our medical system, our work culture, is that healing requires effort.
Yeah.
It's a battle.
You fight a disease, you conquer depression.
You work on your trauma. Exactly.
Exactly.
We approach the body and mind like a broken car that needs a mechanic to get in there with a wrench and just force parts back into place.
Which is exhausting just to think about. It makes healing feel like another full-time job.
Right. But the material we're analyzing today, which, by the way, is this fascinating cross-section of psychology, neurology, spirituality, and even quantum mechanics, it suggests that the body and mind aren't actually broken, not in the way we think. They're just responding, quite intelligently to the conditions you've lived through.
That's a relief to hear, honestly, because I think a lot of us have this baseline feeling of being just deeply tired. And I don't mean I stayed up too late tired. I mean tired of the project of me. Tired of the constant self-improvement, the fixing, the managing of symptoms.
The trying to hack our way back to feeling okay.
Yes.
That exhaustion is actually a key data point. It's a symptom in itself. The source material today acts as a sort of grand unified theory of why we get stuck in that exhaustion. It argues that healing isn't the removal of pain. It's the restoration of balance, flow, and wholeness.
Okay, so we have the Avengers of healing disciplines here. Psychology, neurology, spirituality, quantum physics. That is a heavy stack.
It is.
Let's not let that last one scare anyone off. We will ground it in reality when we get there. But let's start with that definition you just dropped. Restoration of balance versus removal of pain. Can you unpack that? Because if I'm in pain, I definitely want it removed.
Of course. And the source uses a great analogy to set the stage. Well, a broken bone. If you break your arm, you go to the doctor. But does the doctor heal the bone?
No. I mean, they set it. They put it in a cast. They align it.
They align it. Exactly. They set the conditions. They align the bone. They protect it.
Yeah.
And then they step back. The doctor doesn't glue the cells together. The body's own intelligence does that.
Right.
You don't force cells to regenerate. You allow it by creating safety. The argument here is that we try to force our emotional and mental healing rather than just setting the bone and letting that intelligence take over.
That's where it gets tricky, doesn't it? With a broken arm, the cast is visible. Everyone knows you're healing. But when we talk about the psychology of pain, stress, trauma, grief, it's all invisible.
And we don't set the bone.
We just keep walking on the broken leg, pretending it's fine, hoping the pain will just vanish.
And that is the psychological baseline for chronic suffering. The source material is very clear on this. Unresolved emotions do not just vanish. Physics tells us energy can't be destroyed, right? Only transformed.
So if you don't express it, it turns inward. It lives in the nervous system.
And has to go somewhere. So suppression is just storage. We're just hoarding the trauma.
And eventually the storage unit gets full.
Precisely. And the mind starts creating symptoms as signals. From this perspective, and this is the psychology pillar of our deep dive pain, isn't just a nuisance. It is communication. It's a language.
Okay, I want to challenge that slightly. Because if I have a migraine or a panic attack or chronic back pain, it feels less like communication and more like an assault. If my body is trying to talk to me, why is it screaming?
Because you didn't hear the whisper. That's the brutal truth the source offers. The body usually starts with a whisper, a little fatigue, a little tension, a gut feeling that something's off.
And we push through it.
We push through it with caffeine or medicate it away without addressing the root cause, so the body has to turn up the volume. If you ignore the knock at the door, eventually the messenger just kicks the door down.
That makes a terrifying amount of sense. It's like a toddler trying to get your attention. If you've ignored them, they don't go away. They just get louder and start breaking things.
Exactly. So if we accept that symptoms are messages, what are we supposed to do? Because the instinct, everyone's instinct, is make it stop.
Give me the pill, give me the distraction, make this feeling go away, the fix-it mindset.
It is, and it's natural. We're wired to avoid pain. But the source advocates for a critical shift.
Yeah.
We have to stop asking, how do I get rid of this?
And start asking.
What is this asking me to see?
What is this asking me to see? That completely flips the script. It stops being a battle against the symptom and starts being a conversation with it.
Precisely. Often, suffering continues not because the pain exists, but because we are resisting what the pain is trying to tell us. We're shooting the messenger.
So the messenger just knocks louder. Okay, so we stop shooting the messenger. But this isn't just a metaphor, right? The body keeps the score is more than a book title. It's a physiological reality. Let's move into the neurology pillar. How does this actually look in our wiring? I feel like knowing the mechanics helps us believe it.
This is where it gets really validating for anyone who has felt stuck in their healing. Neurology shows us that the body remembers what the mind avoids. When we're in a state of chronic stress, the nervous system gets stuck in survival mode.
Right, fight or flight. Useful if you're running from a tiger, not so useful if you're running from an email.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And the source lists the physiological cost of staying in that state. It's brutal. Your muscles stay tight. Your immunity weakens because the body prioritizes immediate survival over long-term maintenance. Inflammation rises.
And healing just stops.
Slows to a crawl. Think of your body's energy like a budget. In survival mode, 90% of the budget goes to threat detection. There's almost nothing left for tissue repair or emotional processing. You literally cannot heal if your body thinks it's being hunted.
So all the kale smoothies and meditation apps in the world won't matter if that biological switch is stuck on danger.
Correct. You can't supplement your way out of survival mode. And this leads to maybe the most important sentence in the whole neurological section of this research.
Okay.
Safety is not a thought. It is a state of the nervous system.
Whoa, hold on. Safety is not a thought. I need you to drill down on that. Because I can sit and tell myself, I'm safe, but my heart might still be pounding out of my chest.
Exactly. That is a top-down approach, using your thinking brain to try and convince your survival brain. But in trauma or chronic stress, the survival brain is much faster and louder. You can't just think nice thoughts to fix it.
So what do you do if thinking doesn't work?
It requires bottom-up processing, things that physically signal to the primitive brain that the tiger is gone. Breath work, somatic movement, humming, grounding.
Things that change the state of the body itself.
Right. The healing process neurologically begins only when the body gets that biological permission slip that says, I'm allowed to rest now.
I'm allowed to rest now. That feels heavy. I think a lot of us feel like we need permission, but we're waiting for it to come from the outside.
Once I finish this project, then I can rest.
Once the kids are in college, yeah.
But the body can't read your calendar. It only reads your current physiological state. And strangely enough, this bridges us beautifully into the spiritual pillar of this framework. Because if neurology is about safety, spirituality, according to this source, is about identity.
This is where we zoom out a bit. The source says healing is remembering what was never broken, which sounds lovely, a bit poetic. What does that actually mean for someone who's suffering?
It's about the distinction between who you are and what you're experiencing. When we are sick, or in deep grief or anxious, our identity tends to shrink down.
We collapse into the experience.
We stop saying, I am experiencing anxiety, and we start saying, I am anxious. We become the condition.
It takes over the whole picture. You look in the mirror and you just see the diagnosis.
Yes. But the spiritual perspective offers a wider view. It says you are not the illness, you are the field of awareness in which the illness appears. The classic analogy is the sky and the weather.
Right, I've heard this. The clouds are the emotions or the pain, but the sky is me.
Exactly. A hurricane is a violent event. If you're in the hurricane, it's terrifying. But the sky itself isn't damaged by the wind. It contains the storm, but it is not the storm.
And suffering deepens when we forget that, when we think we are the storm.
Right. When we remember we are the sky, we create space. And that space is where healing happens.
This connects to a concept the source brings up called fragmentation. It describes illness as a kind of internal civil war. I found this so striking.
It's a powerful image. Metaphysically, illness often reflects a state where parts of us are fighting other parts. The mind is fighting the body for being tired. The past is fighting the present. Or, very commonly, who you are is fighting who you think you should be.
Oh, that last one. Who you think you should be. That's the killer. I should be able to work 60 hours a week. I shouldn't be sad about this anymore.
And think about the energy cost of a civil war. If you are spending half your energy fighting yourself, hating your anxiety, judging your fatigue, that is energy that cannot be used for healing.
You're draining the battery you need to run the repair program.
So the cure here isn't a medicine, it's a peace treaty. Integration is the word the source uses. Healing is what happens when the war ends.
And the source says, wholeness heals what force never can.
It does.
I'm putting that on a sticky note. It's so counterintuitive because we live in a culture of force. We battle cancer, we fight depression. The language is all war metaphors.
And while the intention is to be strong, the source suggests the mechanism of healing is actually peace, alignment. Which brings us to the most fascinating and maybe risky layer of this deep dive, the quantum perspective.
Yes, the physics. And look, usually when people hear quantum physics in a healing context, they get skeptical. They think we're about to sell them magic crystals.
Right, that it's all woo-woo.
So how does the source ground this in actual science?
It grounds it in the observer effect. In quantum physics, we know the act of observing a particle changes its behavior. The source applies this to biology. The observer matters. Where you place your attention, energy flows.
And I want to be really clear here because the source is really clear here. This is not just positive thinking, is it?
No, and that is a crucial distinction. It isn't about toxic positivity. It's not standing in front of a mirror with a broken leg saying, my leg is perfect. That's delusion. It's about coherence.
Define coherence for us.
Coherence is a state of synchronization. Think of a rowing team. If everyone is rowing at a different rhythm, the boat goes nowhere. That's incoherence. That's stress. Coherence is when the heart, brain, and nervous system are in rhythm.
So present without resistance.
Right. You look at the pain and you say, I see you. You don't scream at it to leave. You acknowledge it. This restores order to the system. And order supports healing. It's not magic. It's alignment.
The source uses a metaphor here that I really like, the inner doctor.
Yes. Imagine your body as a wise physician. Every symptom you feel, that back pain, that fatigue, is a note from the inner doctor. It's a message attempting to protect you or correct your course.
And usually we take those notes and crumple them up, or we take a pill to make the inner doctor shut up.
But we try to silence the doctor. But the text emphasizes that we need to start listening. The body heals best when it is trusted, when you stop being the victim of your body and start being its partner.
Okay, so we've toured the disciplines. We've got the psychology of listening, the neurology of safety, the spirituality of identity, and the quantum mechanics of coherence. But for the person listening right now thinking, okay, but what do I actually do tomorrow morning? How do we apply this?
The source frames this beautifully. Healing is not an event. It is a relationship. You don't do healing like a chore. You enter into a new relationship with yourself. And there are 4 specific shifts you can practice.
Let's run through them. The first one is listening instead of fighting.
Which means when a symptom arises, say a wave of anxiety hits, you pause. You ask, what are you telling me? You treat it with curiosity rather than hostility.
Curiosity is such a better fuel than fear. Okay, the second shift is allowing instead of suppressing.
This is the emotional piece. If grief comes up, let it move through you. If anger comes up, feel it safely. Don't shove it back down into the nervous system where it just becomes inflammation. Energy has to move.
Third, resting instead of forcing.
And this goes back to neurological safety. This means actually giving yourself permission to stop. And not just sleep, I mean active rest. Stopping the mental loop of productivity. It's okay to do nothing.
That's the hardest one for me personally. Doing nothing feels like failing.
Which brings us to the last one. Understanding instead of judging.
This is the compassion piece.
It is. Instead of judging yourself for being sick or tired, I'm weak, everyone else is handling this fine, you seek to understand why your body has reacted this way. You validate your own experience.
It makes sense that I'm tired. I've been running a marathon for 5 years.
Exactly.
It really all comes back to that idea that you don't heal by becoming someone else. You heal by coming back to yourself.
That is the ultimate goal. All the fragmentation, the fighting, the resistance, it's all a departure from who you really are. Healing is the return trip.
I love that. It's a return trip. As we wrap this up, I want to speak directly to the person listening who might be in the thick of it right now. The message from this deep dive is so clear. You are not late. You are not weak. And you are definitely not broken.
Your body is doing its absolute best given the conditions it has been in. Your mind is just asking for some space, and your soul is asking for the truth.
It's a lot to take in, but if you take one thing away, let it be that final distinction. Healing isn't something you earn by working hard at it. It is something you allow.
It's the natural state that returns when the interference stops.
So, here's a thought to leave you with. If your symptoms were actually your allies and not your enemies, what is the very first thing they would want you to change about your life? Just something to consider.
Let that understanding do its quiet work.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.